Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Greetings, I'm Al Belleveau, local blacksmith up here in Bemidji, Minnesota. And today we're going to take some stones and steel and we're going to make ourselves a bird. Now it doesn't have any real practical or pragmatic uses, but it's kind of pretty and I like to have them sitting around. And other people do too. And we're going to take 4 rods of 1/4 inch mild steel iron. We're going to weld them together. We're using a wire welder, which uses CO2 as a shielding gas. Shoots little wire out here when I pull the trigger, along with about 28 volts and about 70 or 80 amps. It's able to melt the wire, melt the base metal, and create what we call a weld, which is bonding 2 pieces of metal together. Then we put a little bit of weld on there. So basically we tack these 4 rods together. Eventually I will clamp these into chucks and vices. And there we go, 4 rods welded together. And we'll stick these in an old pipe threading machine with a pipe vise on it, and I'll twist these cold, which means I won't heat them up to twist. This is a rigid pipe threading machine, which is used for threading pipes. And it's mounted on a couple of I-beams that are about 20 feet long, so I can actually twist things up to 20 feet long. And then just a pipe vise on the back. And this is actually a lathe chuck because the original pipe threading chuck blew up one day when I was twisting something a little heavier than I should have. And so we've been using this lathe chuck ever since. This machine has a wonderful gear reduction in it that allows it to, well, it keeps twisting. It's never stopped twisting. Something bad always happens before it stops. Like the vise blows up or the chuck blows up. So we basically just clamp this down. We turn it on. And it cold twists these rods, which saves us a little energy having to heat them up to twist them. You can always tell it's getting about ready. You can hear it kind of lugging down a little bit. And that's about enough. And if it goes beyond that point, something might end up breaking. Might be me even. I've had it kind of blow apart and throw me around a little bit too. So it's very good at what it does. And this is what I call rock stock. And soon we shall be inserting some rocks into this piece. And we're well on our way to creating ourselves a little iron feathered friend. So from here we move over to the forge. Okay, so a little insertion. There we go. A little bit of air, a little bit of propane. There, that wasn't so bad. So you get this really nice color. You know, that's right. That's just right. So that's what I'm looking for is, you know, a nice space of relatively hot metal about this long. We look like we're ready, we're hot. So I'm going to put a couple of vice grips on here so that I can hold on to it. Vice grips are wonderful. And they're basically the modern rendition of blacksmith tongs. Oftentimes blacksmiths made their own tongs, but vice grips, being as they're so wonderful, they can hold on to lots of different metals. And it looks like we're more than ready, so I'm going to shut this down. Okay, and then we got this nice little chunk of hot metal here, and hopefully it'll work because it doesn't always work every time. So we make sure we're nice and tight, and then we start to untwist it. And this is really the beauty of this. We untwist it until we end up with what we call a blacksmith basket, which was oftentimes used as ornamentation or handles on different items like pokers or different things that needed handles. And then we tighten it back up and we kind of pound on it a little bit because we like to modify the twist. And we tighten it up even more. We like to get it nice and tight because we don't want the stone to fall out for about 200 years. And then there we go. Now we have this lovely bird body wrapped up inside of this steel. And because it's wrapped up inside of the steel, I can do something with it now because I weld steel. And there'll be less of an explosion this time. We're going to put another rock on the other end of this so that we can fully utilize this rod. And most of these rocks have come from Lake Superior because they got really cool rocks there that have, you know, kind of broken off from the cliffs, and they've rolled out and they've rolled in for eons of time until, like all of us, the rough edges are kind of rounded off and they become these beautiful little eggs. Ooh, nice. Very nice. I just love the way this stuff just kind of works. Get in there, little stone. Yes, I know it's hot, but that's good. Okay, because we're going to be putting little itty bitty stones in now, we're going to be using a smaller forge. Actually, this is an oxyacetylene torch with a rosebud on it. And it's called a rosebud because it has a flame like a rosebud, which is kind of neat and heats things up fairly fast. And the stones enjoy the fact that they're going to be hanging out with humans for a while and not rolling around quite as much as they are accustomed to. And eventually the steel will rot away in a few hundred years, and they'll continue to do what stones do, which is get smaller. So we're just going to do the same thing that the forge did, except we're doing it at a much smaller level. Heating up an area of steel here, untwisting it, making an insertion, tightening things down, and this will be the head for the bird, or birds. Now, the wonderful thing about steel is, and steel is everywhere, all metals, you know, we've tried to replace a lot of steel with plastic and composites, various different types of graphite composites and stuff, and that's great. I think there's a place for that. But steel is still kind of the backbone of this country. And it's relative, you know, you pick it up, it's cold, it's hard, but all you got to do is add a little energy to it, a little bit of heat, and it gets just all kinds of warm and squishy, and you're able to manipulate it then, real similar to clay. You know, then your metal becomes kind of this plastic, clay-like, I don't want to use the term plastic, but clay-like substance that you can manipulate. And that's really what blacksmithing is all about. It's heating things up and utilizing various tools in order to manipulate that hot, plastic-like metal. And then, of course, then it cools down and it ends up being this nice, hard thing that can take the wear and tear and elements. Okay, from this point, we're going to put some tail feathers on these guys. This one looks like it's going to have very short tail feathers, and this one's going to have long tail feathers. So, and all I'm going to do there is basically open the rods up a little bit. So down the road I can expand them and manipulate them a little better. And we're just going to open that up a little. Do the same down here. There, now that has to cool off for just a little bit until we can grab a hold of it without creating a lot of smoke. And then we're going to chop it up into little pieces. Okay, here we go. This is an awkward looking head here. I'm just trying to figure out if, well, maybe we can do that. No, I don't know. That's kind of goofy. I'm sure we'll make it work. Nothing is ever wasted, so it'll actually, I think I might enjoy the awkwardness of that particular piece. Okay, now we're going to grind some of these pieces. I'm going to bend a leg or a couple of legs here. Just kind of heating up a little rod. I'm just untwisting the tail feathers, basically, where we opened it up into a little basket, and that was to accommodate our ability to kind of untwist it a little bit and try to portray tail feathers. So this all kind of started about a decade ago. I brought home a bunch of rocks, and of course I primarily work in steel, but I just had to have these rocks. Most of the people that I know bring rocks home with them. Wherever they go, they pick up some rocks and they go, this is a special rock. It's almost like the rock has called out to them and said, look at me, take me home. Whatever reason it is that man has this association with rocks, stones, perhaps it's part of our primordial DNA. I'm not really sure, but I find rocks very pleasing, and especially these wonderful round rocks. And so as they were laying on the floor and I'd keep walking past them, I'm kind of like, you know, there has to be a way that I can attach steel to these rocks, and once I do that, then I can do anything. You know, if they got steel on them, I could, but otherwise you glue rocks together and they only hold for a little while, and you can drill holes in them and fiberglass in little rods, and I've done that too, and put rocks together, and that's pretty cool. But in order to create larger sculptures with these stones, somehow we had to get steel around them. Once we were able to wrap steel around rocks, we just did that a lot because it's exciting. You heat the steel up, it's just all, you can just feel the molecular energy inside. It's just bursting, waiting to have something happen to it. And so we ended up with a lot of things, a lot of steel wrapped around it, a lot of rocks, and I made all kinds of cool stuff. Made birds and strange little people. A lot of accoutrements, railings with rocks in them, all kinds of things. And I didn't realize that there was a metaphor at play here. This realization came to me, what I was doing. That's when I realized that this is the metaphor for us, which makes perfect sense. That the rock is the soul, or the spirit of man. It's that thing that exists beyond the mortal flesh. That the steel is the flesh. And it's temporary. It's wrapped around this soul or spirit, essence, whatever you wish to call it, for a very short time. In the case of my sculptures, it's maybe 100 or 200 years, depending on the conditions, the humidity, things of that nature. For us, you know, it's anywhere from no time at all to 100 years, or sometimes a little bit more. It constantly reminds me of my mortality, but it also reminds me of my eternity. And so it just makes this whole wrapping iron around stones, wrapping flesh around spirits, just a little bit deeper and more meaningful to me. And then really that's the essence of it. And outside I have a sculpture that I made for my friend that died 2 years ago, October 15th, that I made for him, because what it is it's the stone specter of death. So Bradley died in October 15th, 2007, after fighting cancer for about 7 months. Very harrowing experience, and yet it had a lot of spiritual significance. And so the stone specter of death basically is this mythological creature that comes down and literally does pluck the souls out of the bodies, the earthly flesh, and then transports them to wherever they may betide in the future, whether that's your conception of Valhalla, heaven, reincarnation, or whatever the next step in the process is. The stone specter of death is that transport agent. So what it has is literally this dragon-looking creature has plucked this perfect white stone out of this cage of iron. And that is the metaphor of the spirit being transported then on its journey. So that's what I wanted to say about what this is really all about now. It's very exciting.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.